Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 5th edition of Nextv CEO Africa, DataX's first virtual conference for the Sub-Saharan African region. So we would like to take this opportunity to first of all thank our sponsors, speakers, and attendees in making this event possible. There are 2 full days of conferencing packed with insightful panel session and one-on-one discussions to help you navigate through this ever-changing ecosystem. Let's take a look at today's agenda. So today we'll kickstart with Africa's booming music industry panel, followed by a one-on-one discussion sponsored by BBC World News, where we will talk about COVID and what this year has been and the meaning of for TV news, followed by a discussion with Eutelsat, TV everywhere and for everyone. Also, our next panel discussion will be at 12:15 with building a resilient African FTA industry. In the afternoon, we will have a panel discussion sponsored by Deutsche Welle, bringing storytelling back to the news. And then we will followed by the panel session with BBC again, where we will talk about the shifting TV viewing habits and the usage of multi-devices. And finally, we will conclude the day with mobile money and integration of payment for pay TV and OTT platforms. So today I have the pleasure to introduce for the first panel session Africa's booming music streaming industry. I would like to welcome the panelists for today, and it is Frank Kaku from Universal Music Africa, Gillian Ezra from Simfi, Adeyemi Adetunji from Audiomack, Kabelo Makudu from Jukes Music, and finally, Manusha Sarawan from Sony Music in South Africa. And this panel will be moderated by Eddie Micah, journalist from Deutsche Welle. Eddie, the screen is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like how you put it. The screen is all mine. I see everyone here. Welcome to this panel discussion. I think Shana has mentioned it all. It's rather unfortunate, or maybe we shouldn't be too sad about it. This is the new normal, that we see each other on screens instead of meeting physically and interacting and saying hello, hi's. But it is what it is. Just a reminder, I am Eddie Micah Jr., broadcast journalist with Deutsche Welle. And this panel is going to be talking about Africa's booming music streaming industry. Sounds positive in itself because we're talking about booming, right? But obviously, there are more challenges out there that have to be dealt with if we have to reach the level that we want to get. And I'm sure we all want to get there. So again, introducing my panel just to be a bit more detailed about what they do. Manusha Sarawan is here, Commercial and Business Affairs Director with Sony Music. Give us a wave, Manusha, so we can, yeah, that's Manusha, okay. There's also Gillian Ezra, Group Head, Legal and Commercial with Simfi. Hello, Gillian. Okay, there you are. Then Adetunji is Head of Operations and Commercial Partnerships with Audiomack. Okay. Then we have Kabelo Makudu, Music Curator, Label Relations and Content Marketing Lead with Jukes. Oh yeah, that's you. Like the background again, by the way, I told you earlier. But there's also Frank Kabu, Director General, Universal Music Africa. Okay, you look very professional in your office setting and all, but let's set the ball rolling. Let's talk music. I don't know, I've not met anyone who doesn't love music. So for me, it's very important and it's a passion to even talk about it. I always say, if it wasn't for journalism, who knows, I'd have been a musician. But that's for another day. Let's set it off with, especially in relation to what our topic says, Africa's booming music streaming industry. And let's talk about the state of music streaming across the continent. And I'll throw this first one to Manusha Sarawan.
Perfect. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you to my panelists, and thank you for Database for having us. I must say it's an exciting time to be an artist, to be a label, and to be a streaming service in Africa at this moment. Why do I say that? I think, we're a mobile first market. There's several legitimate streaming services that are on the continent, and most of them have landed on the continent over the last year. There's a healthy balance of both international platforms and locally developed platforms in the market, and really the barriers to entry onto streaming services is very low or nothing for an artist. So they are able to get their content out there. And there's a lot of investment, not only internationally, but locally in music catalogs, in digitization of content, etc. So we see those opportunities. Obviously, our continent comes with its own challenges, in the sense of data costs still remain very real. Payment solutions are a challenge. So those are two big things that remain a challenge. There's an element of piracy that's in our markets, but for me, you still need data to pirate, to listen to a pirate service or pirate audio streaming service, as an example. I think we also have the plus is that mobile payment solutions continue to be an important pillar strategy for telcos. So telco music partnerships, I think, are very important, whether it is with the DSP or whether it's simply providing a payment solution. I think there's a role for digital advertising in the market, but also what's really great is that we're finding music solutions for Africans, meaning that we're packaging our music content for our market. So whether it's an hourly service, a daily service, a weekly service, or an ad-funded service, which is really important, because often we say paying for a music service is very, very expensive. But with the ad-funded service and the booming digital advertising, we see that as important sort of growth factors or systems to help us grow the market. Okay. So for me, and also year on year, the South African market has grown from streaming, the African market's growing, and it'd be great if we can collect sort of more data on that. And I'm sure we're going to cover lots of this in sort of later discussions. I hope it seems
yeah, I hope. Yeah, that's a good overview. Sounds like there's a lot to be happy about, but we cannot obviously put aside the challenges there still are. And we'll be delving into that a bit, but we cannot obviously ignore the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19, right? It's the reason we're all behind our screens right now talking. So my next question or interactive area would be starting with Gillian Ezra with Simfi, and to find out what really has the COVID-19 pandemic taught us about music streaming sites or apps.
I mean, I think that's a very interesting question. And I'd have to start with the learnings in the team from the COVID pandemic, just learning how to work remotely, learning how to communicate, and learning how to share ideas and express creativity at, in a remote team. Whilst we've always had, I think everyone here has always had a remote team to some extent, because we work with a continent as opposed to a country. It's really been an incredible learning curve for everyone. And of course, that also helps you to understand your user. And I think it's been, certainly from my or our perspective, it's been a phased learning. Initially, there was this very negative response, I think, in the creative community, where the releases weren't as prolific as they usually are. Perhaps, the artists, were holding back their releases or weren't feeling the spark of creativity. And there was definitely a struggle in the beginning, because we weren't getting those new releases. And to a certain extent, streaming is very much about music discovery. It's certainly about catalog, but I think music discovery is what drives streaming. And then we got the releases that were deep and meaningful, if I can put it that way. Then we got the releases where the artists had been you know, I don't know if the right word is inspired, but the artists were reacting to the environment, and artists were singing about loss and distance and grief. And it's a very interesting theme to express when you're marketing and actively seeking users, because it's not the easiest way to reach out to users, but an incredibly important theme. So I think it's been quite an expressive process that has taught us a lot about what our users are interested in, what our creative community is inspired by. And it seems to be normalizing. You know, we've come through year end that felt like a normal year end. And now we're heading into Easter. We're in South Africa, and in West Africa, it's very gospel orientated. So it does feel like there's some normality coming back to us, even, you know, as you said, Eddie, a new normal.
New normal. I don't know if I want to stick to this normal though. You know, it would be nice to have the old normal back. But let's move to the guys now. And already Manusha Saravan from Sony Music highlighted some of the challenges, particularly even more so during the COVID-19 pandemic times. I'm Ghanaian, and I was constantly hearing Ghanaian artists, all the A-list artists complaining about how to, you know, make the money, because most of them make money like playing the shows. You know, there were a lot of like events, holidays that had to be canceled, rightfully so, because of the pandemic. And that was definitely very, very hard. Then this actually threw the spotlight on what really happens, you know, with music streaming websites and whether people are even interested in it. I'm coming to you with this, Frank Kaku, with Universal Music Africa. Here's the thing. A lot of young people love to listen to music, but they don't really want to pay for it. And the COVID-19 pandemic time, which prevented artists from performing, would have made a lot of money via streaming, but that faced its own challenges. What do you say in such a situation in terms of the youth sort of gravitating towards music, but so to speak, illegally?
I mean, we actually, as Manusha said, we went through a phase of the creatives, artists not being really adapted themselves to this environment, and then from a moment to another, they accepted that, well, this is kind of the new normal, so they had to adapt. And what you said starting this whole panel is that I think that the actors are more conscious of Africa's power today, as far as demography, as far as our youth. And when it comes to the COVID-19, it accelerated everything as far as the business, because of course there are users, but there are also mobile operators and DSPs. When you cancel the shows and you cancel the live experience, the way you see it, the way you experience it, you have to focus on other revenue streams. And the other revenue streams are the brand partnerships and the advertising. And of course, brands still had to communicate and still had to go through music and artists and content to communicate through their and touch their targets. So we had to have like conversations with the artists, and artists being more conscious of the environment that we're in, to focus on still delivering content, more adapted content, to kind of balance between what happens on the live scene and with the bookings and etc., and still feeds the DSP, still feeds the brands, still feeds the telephone operators. And this is how you start accelerating the digital transformation when it comes to music on the continent. I think that COVID-19 was and still is kind of an opportunity for our territories to be more aware of where we're supposed to be as far as this type of mobile consumption environment. So we actually drove our artists to this digital era, still had a few shows in West Africa, French West Africa, we could do a few shows in December, in Cote d'Ivoire, a few shows in Cameroon, but we're still kind of, picky with the concerts. So we drove everything from the shows to the content, to the digital content, to creating new digital experiences. And this is where, this is when artists and top acts start considering these revenue streams, like how important DSPs are, how important digital is, how important this new global environment is.
Okay, so I mean, you talk about sort of driving the youth onto these platforms. Okay, so there's one thing, letting them have that attention or the awareness that, hey, there's this thing out there that I can tune in and actually listen to music. But the truth is, coming to you, Adeyemi Adetunji, who is with AudioMark, the truth is, most youth maybe don't want to pay, because they have other ways of getting their music, whether it's through just listening to the radio where new music is always released, or illegal downloading. There's a lot of websites for that, and artists have constantly been complaining about it. So, Adeyemi, with AudioMark, why will the youth want to pay if they can get it for free? How do you convince them to sort of get into this culture?
Hi, I really do believe that in order for us to get the youth into the culture of, let's say, paying for a subscription-based model and things, it's just based on the person or the DSP providing the service, showing that they have an intrinsic value towards them, and also educating them as to why to not go on pirated sites. I believe that arts people will always pay for things that they believe that they have value for. On the continent, we pay hefty sums for the DSTV program package. And I believe that that's just because people know that that's where they get their compelling content from, and that's something that brings value to them. So I believe that people will always be convinced towards paying for something as long as they know that there's an intrinsic value and they're being provided with a service that they can't get anywhere else. So I believe that's the way that we really do get the youth on board, by just kind of educating them as to why your service is providing value for them. And so it's a long process.
Sorry, I started talking without, this is what happens sometimes. I started talking without unmuting myself. What about, talking about models here, and still with you, Adeyemi. AudioMark has said, I feel like, especially you started with a very interesting model. You seem to really, cause some sort of traffic. You draw people there. Help us understand a bit your model, because you saying you're not like Spotify or Apple Music, but you're more like, is it YouTube, or just help us understand what your model is? AudioMark, that is.
Well, we have our ad-supported tier and a subscription tier, but AudioMark itself prides itself on being primarily a music discovery platform. So we use our trending music channels to assist artists that may not have necessarily the biggest name per se, but will just have quality music. So we try and drive our listeners to listen to not just A-list artists, but just listen to like quality music. So we always try and drive, and we see that that actually is where our listeners come to us for. They usually come to us to try and discover music and try and discover songs that they might have never heard before. So we try and amplify not just the A-list artists per se, but just the next and upcoming talent. So we also try and be in the market by having a lot of competitions whereby we encourage artists to create, and we also try and promote those creations that they've made on the platform as much as we can. So we really just try and speak for not necessarily just the A-listers, but the up-and-comers as well. So that's what I would say.
Okay, so you're drawing traffic. Where's the money coming from? Where's the money going? These artists that are on your platform then making money out of people listening to their music on it? Or what's the deal there?
Oh, we recently started our monetization program, I believe in 2019 or 2020. I'll have to confirm that with you, but we do have a monetization structure on the platform.
Okay, so Jukes.
Sorry, can I just jump in, Eddie?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So what you're saying is you're trying to, as Eddie says, draw traffic to your platform, create brand value for your platform, or the perception of brand value for the artist, but you don't have a monetization. So what you're selling, as I understand it from what you're saying, is helping create brand value for an artist, but not necessarily translating that into revenue for the artist. That's where I'm trying to, that's where the disconnect is for me.
Oh, we do have a monetization program. That's on our AMP program. We recently started that in 2019, I believe.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Of course, sorry. I realized I was off again, thanks to Gillian shaking her head. But coming to you, Kabelo Makudu with Jukes. It's obviously a beautiful thing, an online platform where, I mean, I'm on, I don't know, 2 or 3 different online platforms because I love my music, right? But we've been talking about this, and there's something that has kept coming up, you know, tailoring the service to suit the market, which is very, very key. One of the main challenges people face, and the most youth across the continent say, why would I pay all that money when I can get this for free? It's because, first of all, the data cost is pretty high all across the continent. That's a big challenge. Access to the internet, as much as it's been growing, is still a long way to go considering Africa's youth. Is this the main challenge you also face? And really, what's the way of getting around this?
So, you know, for us, hello to everybody first and foremost. The way for us, how we try to combat that is the year prior, we had a deal with DSTV. So if you had DSTV, you would technically get Jukes for free. You know, if you're a DSTV subscriber, you would kind of get Jukes for free as like an added package to that. Mm-hmm. So that helped kind of, so as we entered COVID, that made our entrance into COVID a bit easier. What we had to then do is kind of do a little bit more of customer validation in terms of trying to see, well, you know, there's not a lot of like new music stuff that's going out weekly, right? But we have catalog. So how do we then engage that catalog to kind of open it up to everybody? Because, you know, you would see a lot of people going to listen to things like documentaries, going to watch, like, you know, just kind of getting into like all the things that they would get into, because now they have time to get into it, you know, because before you've kind of taken out the schedule of going to work. So that hour you might spend driving is an hour you can spend, like, you know, listening to like kind of your older music or watching YouTube or whatever the case is. So we then, you know, looked at it and said, well, you know, people like documentaries. So let's have a Last Dance playlist, for example. Let's have a, you know, whatever occurrence might have happened in that month, that day, you know, let's try to have a playlist that caters towards that. So we would cater towards kind of the youth, whatever that might be, and as well as kind of the older crowd, because I think sometimes those kind of do get left behind, that older crowd. And that's kind of what helped us kind of bridge the balance between the two.
How has the issue of the cost of data and the price involved in listening to music influenced how are you trying to address that specifically?
So, you know, the deals like we had with DSTV helped us quite a lot, because now you've taken out the subscription payment. All it has to be is just you know, you just have to basically pay for the data. So there's different things we would suggest to customers. I mean, there's different tiers in the app where you can choose what type of quality you want to listen to your music to. So we would tell people, hey, you can listen to your music that streams like the least data as per this thing. So it was just kind of finding new ways to explain those things, because I think a lot of other places do offer them, but people don't know how to kind of sell it to people.
So here's what's obvious, that the fact that I have, how many people? I have 5 people that I'm talking to. All these are sort of music streaming or online platforms or apps, shows that there is quite a number out there on the market. You know, how important is it to have, would you call it healthy competition among, is that a good thing or is that a challenge? Coming to you with Manusha Saravan with Sony Music.
Right. It's a good thing to have different services on the market, because each of them bring a different, they have a different USP in terms of either their functionality, either model that they offer, their curation system, their discovery. Some of them are attached to, handset partners. As an example, Boomplay started off being attached with, coming out of the techno home. Of course, it's still their holding company. Apple is on the market, and each one of them cater for different LSMs within the market. So the Apple, the person that uses the Apple Music streaming service would, would traditionally have an Apple device. You would have, Spotify that positions itself as a global brand that's number one in, and they do it very well. They're annoyingly good at their curation kind of thing. And each service, and then you have Music Time that has a telco partnership that is offering different things for different consumers. And at the end of the day, if I use Video X as an example, it's a Nigerian service that's very local in look and feel. So each one of them has a different strategy as to how they bring the product to market, or how they bring the artist to market, or local content to market, etc. And each one of them plays a role in the artist's career and development. So for us as a record company, and Frank will attest to it as well, we sort of try to match each platform strategy and what they want to achieve by pitching different artist opportunities to different artists, and align them with what the platform wants to achieve and what the artist wishes to achieve at that point in time in their careers. So healthy competition is good at the moment, because as I say, these different models, we'll see the growth of ad-funded services, because not only is data cost challenging, but the subscription fee challenging as well. And I suppose Gillian can talk to some of the models that they're bringing to market that assists the consumer, or lessen the burden, so to speak, on the consumer to pay for music services.
That's a good way to pass it on to Gillian. Over to you.
Thank you, Manusha. So I think the first point that I just wanted to make quickly about the diversity of streaming in Africa is that there's something very special about working in the music industry in Africa, where we work together very cooperatively. And I think it's incredibly exciting that we are seeing these new services and the smaller local services as well, because all of us are working together to educate people, to pay for music, to come together. We're all going to win together. And I think it's a very important point that perhaps doesn't exist in other parts of the world. We really work together very cooperatively. From our side, we run an app called Music Time, but we have a second service called Ayoba, which is actually an instant messaging service. And I think this is what Manusha was pointing at. This is our strategy to deal with piracy, with free data, with educating the youth. The idea is that we have a very limited playlist service in this app, which is actually, so it effectively is the free music, which we are paying for, and free data. And this is really one of our strategies to draw people into the world of streaming, where you come in through the super app concept, and you'll experience the power of our curation and our music streaming. And the whole idea is that it upsells you into the paid side of music. So, this is what we believe is the bridge and the platform to bring together and surpass all the problems that we've been discussing in this session. It's a very new strategy, launched late last year, so far proving very, very popular. And we're really looking forward to watching it grow.
Yeah. Definitely, we're all going to keep our eyes locked on all of these platforms. And guys, if you just joined us, we are the first panel for the virtual conference Nextv CEO Africa 2011. Of course, I said 2011, 2021. The topic is Africa's booming music streaming industry, and we've been looking at different areas. And I have a rich panel here. Just so you're aware, if you want to be a part of this, you can, send your questions through, and we'll give time for the panel to, delve into these ones. We just came off the back of the ladies talking about how important it is to have healthy competition with the various number of music streaming sites or apps out there. And that's very necessary. One thing, obviously, that is key, and you guys are the pros, so correct me if I'm wrong, is the role that telecoms play, right? Because in all of these countries, be it MTN, Vodafone, wherever or whatever, these will play. How do you? What's the challenge there, or how do you basically balance having this app, negotiating or having some deal with these telecoms to give the very good service that is needed out there? I'm going to come to you with this, Cabello.
Well, that's an interesting question, because how we try to do it is via kind of the things that we have in app. You know, we created this thing where people were not able to perform, right? Because of the whole COVID thing. So I was like, well, let's come up with a thing where they can just basically open up the app and let them perform, you know, because people were performing into Instagram for free, you know, and you know, we got to monetize that, and we got to sell it to a few telecoms that were like, you know, were really loving the idea. So I think the thing here is trying to come up with different ways to make yourself unique from other places, you know. And I think a lot of telecoms like to support people that support local artists, independent artists, just like up and coming artists. Maybe let me use that word rather. And that is quite attractive, because everybody wants to be kind of a part of a storyline of an artist, like, you know, from the initial stages until they become super successful.
Is there a challenge with some telecoms that are also, you know, doing their own thing? You know, they also have their own platforms where people can go in there and listen to music. Do you find that challenging when you, as a company, want to also put your music out there? Coming to you, Frank Kaku with Universal Music.
Well, it's an interesting time when it comes to telcos, because as far as the competition between the DSPs, telcos are also competing in a very hard way. And I think that there's a race to content and communication. And as far as content, the diversity of these DSPs and the diversity of the creatives, the artists, help us come with a diversity of offers. And it makes it, of course, more interesting for us to have a way to talk and work with the DSPs and have a different way of working and talking with the telcos, with their inner apps or their solution for the users. So as far as the DSPs, I wanted to jump back to one of the things you said, and the other question, as far as this healthy competition, and it's linked to what you're saying right now. It's a wonderful signal. It's a wonderful signal, because the diversity of the DSPs that we have, as far as the local ones and also the more global ones, is a mirror to what Africa is today. We are on the French-speaking market, which is totally different from the English-speaking market, and the habits of the French-speaking consumers over here is not the same. So they need to have a way or a somewhere where they can like find these habits. And of course, local telephone companies are aware of that. So they're looking for content and a way to communicate that is not the same as in, like, for instance, MTN in South Africa might not communicate and talk to the users the same way they do in Cote d'Ivoire or in Cameroon. So they're coming with different solutions. They're coming with global apps, not specific with the music, not only music orientated. And it's also a way to drive things. I think that diversity is key in the territories we are today. And it's globally a great signal for the business.
Okay, cool. Adeyemi Adetunji, you're nodding your head in approval of something that he said, which is a good thing. So, you know, I've been talking to some local artists, and sometimes what I gather, especially those that are not A-list, they feel they are not getting their fair share of monies on some of these platforms, even though they feel that a lot of people are listening to their music. Is it something that you're concerned about, or we should be concerned about?
I believe when it comes to revenue, we should always be concerned when people feel as if they're not getting paid enough. But I mean, there's also the education factor of having to explain to them how they can monetize their content and teach them ways in which to exploit their content in order to generate revenue. So it's a constant education that we must always go through with artists, but it's something that we must be up to the task to continue to do in order to teach and educate to ensure that it happens correctly.
So clearly it's not just a case of, oh, I have some good banging music, everyone's listening to it. It goes beyond that. So consider me as an artist, you know, I'm trying to revive my broken dreams, but yes, so I have some very good song out there, people are tuning into it. How do I make money?
Well, I mean, there are different ways to actually generate revenue as an artist. I mean, there's, I know it's not really popular here, but radio play is a way that you can promote your music, put it out on all the having relationships with DSPs so that they put your music on the right platforms, on the right playlists, so that you can actually end up generating revenue from going to shows as well as the DSPs. But you must also always, from yourself, always have a good marketing strategy in order to like get your story out there so that you can connect with your audience better. Because at the end of the day, no one's going to pay for something they don't see a value in. So if your audience or your listeners can actually connect with you, they pay to go for your shows or buy your merchandise or do things along those lines to support your story and help you come up. So I believe that's the advice I would give people. Just try and find ways to connect with your audience better so that you can.
Okay. Because it's a numbers thing. I see Manusha wants to get in here. Manusha, please. Yeah.
Sorry, Eddie, I just wanted to make a point. Although we're talking about streaming services only and sort of paid and ad funded, I think we need to also talk about opportunities for artists to make money off other aligned services. Mm-hmm. And when I say aligned services, maybe aligned is not the correct word, associated services. So if we look at TikTok, for an example, you know, there's been a boom in TikTok, and there's enough stats out there to talk about during this pandemic year, sort of what TikTok has done in terms of reaching that Gen Z, but also music was a key pillar for a strategy that underlined usage of music within a TikTok or within a Triller or within an Instagram Reels, Facebook. You know, there are lots of aligned platforms that have become very important pillars for us and our artists as well to use music. So I think also when an artist looks at their strategy, inclusive of whether it's radio, you know, the streaming services, there are these other line services or these other services that are quite music intensive users that tend to use, and it's all user generated content. So they're amazing marketing tools, but they're also great or different revenue streams. So I think also for us to be aware that those platforms are also helping artists earn revenue and increase their revenue and help streaming, because the drive generally is off that platform to a streaming platform to consume the whole track, because obviously those platforms is very bite-sized sort of chunks of music. Also, what's great is that there's been a revival of certain catalog, older songs that the youth are finding out on TikTok, and they're not trends because something quirky is done, etc. So also sort of very important for us these other platforms, and that's the point I wanted to make as well.
No, and that's a very good point, obviously. So basically, it sounds like a lot of work, guys. Like if you're an artist, you really sort of have to be like an octopus, you know. You should be everywhere trying to maximize the potential of every platform. I'm coming to you here with this one, Gillian, with Simfi. Is this something that you actually, during your interactions with artists, if you do, is this something that you actually outline the many different ways that artists can be that relevant and make that money?
Yeah, I think the point, the way I interpret Manusha's point is that we have a growing trend that users want to be more involved in the music. Music used to be a very one-way controlled process, and now we have services like TikTok who are giving the users the opportunity to get involved in the music, make their own music video, contribute to the conversation and their interpretation, whether it's through dance or through a video. So we in Ayoba have actually launched an incredible artist strategy where we've put up different channels for various artists, which we're going to be running in collaboration with a lot of artists. to actually start bringing that into activity, because it's very difficult for a music streaming service to express the two-way nature of this conversation, and everyone is doing it in different ways, and this is our way of doing it. I think it's very important to recognize the importance of the user-generated content and to draw it into your service to give your users and your community the opportunity to express themselves.
Okay. Cabello, you want to come in here?
Because, you know, there's a lot of things that are kind of like happening, and one of them is a company, I forgot the name now, but they kind of let the artists sell kind of publishing and basically publishing to the fans. That gets kind of fans engaged in that, you know, which is very new to like kind of, if you think about it in that way, you being able to kind of sell a portion of your song to people, which is something that I've seen maybe over the past 6 months has helped people kind of, you know, it's a new way of looking at doing music, is sell a bit of your music to your fans, because then they feel more inclined to make the song a success because they own a bit of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw you, Adeyemi, nodding your head at some point. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh no, I just had heard of the company he was talking about. I also just can't remember the name, so I was trying to do a quick Google.
Okay, so
you guys talking about royalty exchange.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That sounds like it, but I'll remember the name.
So guys, I'm switching this a bit because I want to think very local now, right? As Ghanaian, as African, and what do you make of the idea of investing a lot, you know, on African-centered music streaming platforms? You know, sort of drawing local artists more to these platforms rather than to, you know, be engaged with the Spotifys and, you know, the big guns, Apple Music and all that, even though, of course, these international ones also sort of seem to want to have a department centering on African artists. But will it be a great thing to mainly invest more in these local platforms? This can be taken by anyone.
I jump in there, and I think what I've learned, what we've learned is that, you know, it's cool to have all the music and all that stuff, but understanding your demographic and where you kind of in your region is what wins. You know what I mean? You can have as much kind of African music as you want, but is learning which, you know, is understanding kind of the line between too much and like just right. So for us, what we've seen as Jukes is local will always win. You know, people will always want to go run towards an AKA song, for example. And as much as they'll go to a Drake, but, you know, it's good to have those options there, and always highlight to people that your local artist is as big as the Drakes of the world, because, you know, locally they're seen as that. So it's always kind of bringing that across for us via playlisting, like with the artwork and just kind of homepage editing and just putting those items there for people to find.
Anyone want to jump on?
Yes, I wanted to jump on that, and I totally agree, because like locally, you get to experience the fact that the people listen to 60 to 70% of local music. So we have like huge local stars that might not be on that global platform, such as like the Rihannas, the Drakes, but we have like very huge local stars that are as famous and as big locally as these Drakes and Migos and Rihanna's. So, like for instance, DJ Arafat, who actually passed away a couple of years ago, was a legend when he was still alive. And we have young stars in Côte d'Ivoire, such as Suspect 95, who's like a huge star, who's like our Migos, our Post Malone. You see, so they need to, we need to be aware of the local power we have, and as far as the DSPs is the same. I think that the way we work with these local DSPs and the way we pitch the playlist and the way the curation is being made is stuck to what drives attention locally. Even these global DSPs are aware that the local curation is important. For instance, Apple Music has like a local in SA, a local bureau that talks to the creatives and the majors, and that doesn't happen in London or in Paris or in the US. It's on the continent. It's not yet in Cote d'Ivoire or in Cameroon, and I hope that French West Africa will drive more attention in the next few years. But it's just like, once again, it's a good signal of the consideration of our local environment and how huge our local artists can be.
Okay. Gillian, who needs who more? Do the artists need these online streaming platforms more, or do these platforms need the artists?
I think it's a completely symbiotic relationship. We can't survive without each other. You can build the most incredible technology in the world, but if you don't have the beautiful music we have in Africa, who's going to come and listen? So, and I just want to make one little comment about the current topic. I find that it doesn't matter who the platform is or the media, everyone is behind African talent at the moment. With all the telcos that we work with at the moment, if you try and get a marketing campaign for an international artist, they're all like, no, people want to hear about local talent. So it's even coming through from that end of the spectrum, the commitment to the talent in Africa. So I don't think it matters where you are, if you work for a TV, radio, DSP, it doesn't matter where you are in Africa, you're all about the talent at the moment.
Okay. Should I give the chance Manusha to hop on?
Right. So in terms of sort of local first, I think for us, although we're owned by a principal internationally, our strategy is to invest in African music in Africa. That's our brief. So we we continue to invest, we continue to expand, and you'd see over the last year or two more and more major record companies set up offices in Nigeria, set up offices in Kenya, etc. So, we're putting money behind it and investing in local talent. And I think that's hugely important. Also, as Julian and Frank both echoed, you can have the international platforms, the global platforms rather, they also are very aware of the need to localize, of the need to curate and try to speak to a local audience and not push a very different message. So Spotify, for example, has now localized for language. I mean, some Music Time has localized for language in some markets. So it's very important for people, for them as Spotify, and obviously for Music Time, to note that we need to speak to an audience in the way they want to be spoken to, and we're very proud of our languages in Africa. And I think a lot of the local platforms recognize this along with the global platform. So I think, and also from a record company point of view, we try to have partner parity. So we try to treat each of our partners equally, giving each of them an opportunity, and also speak to their strategies. As we've all said, it's a very symbiotic relationship between record company and the various streaming services.
Okay. Which you guys are the experts, so that's why I'm really pushing this, because I want to know what type of content is driving usage and subscription. And in terms of content, possibly the genre of music, on the continent that is really driving. People are coming onto these platforms. What do they want to listen to, really? Anyone?
I'll quickly. Oh, is Manusha going? Okay, I'll just jump in here. So what we've seen kind of as DSP is adapting it with I think in South Africa, it's kind of like we have a set kind of thing, right? So like now for the next maybe going on 2 months, we're going to be like gospel type, that type of music orientated. Then after that is kind of like, your hip hoppy R&B type stuff, that kind of from that September, October, November, December, a little bit into Jan is like your house kind of music locally. So we adapted to every kind of thing, as well as speaking to whatever labels, if they have, some nice drops that kind of come there in between. we'll also use that in line with whatever we might have coming up and stuff like that. So it's, for us, we are as flexible as we can be, music provided.
Okay, Frank, Universal Music.
As far as the content, I don't know if you ask it as on a global scale, because if it's on a global scale, video content still drives a lot of attention on the continent. There's still a way where, well, you shot that video, you dropped that video, well, you're a star. You know, like, it's not just like the music is, of course, music being out there is huge, but people seeing a video, seeing people on TV or seeing a video is still a thing on there. So video still drives a lot of attention. But I mean, as Cabello said, local genres are number one on there. Gospel is huge on the continent, like really, really, really huge. Then you come to your urban, I'll say, hip hop oriented Afrobeat type of genre, which is way more stuck to, way more adapted to your new way of consuming music, which is the streaming. These young kids see and consider the number of streams they like to see if their favorite artist is popular enough, if he has like XYZ number of streams. So this genre drives a lot of attention to the DSP. So it's I'll say gospel, local genres, and then hip hop, urban music.
Okay.
I'm also very curious of the way podcasts are coming into the continent. Not only the video podcasts, but also the audio ones. It's a huge market outside the continent, but I think that it's also coming in here in a different way, and it will be interesting to see how us, like content providers, and how local DSPs find a balance to find our way to like give out these new ways of new radios and new, like, new interviews. It's interesting to see how it's moving.
Yeah, talking about how things are moving. We've been talking. I didn't even realize we have just about 10 minutes to wrap up. So I want to give all of you the chance to give your final words. We already are talking about a booming music streaming industry on the continent, and that's a good thing. But bearing in mind all the challenges that we've talked about, the cost of data, access to the internet, the issue of piracy, illegal streaming and downloading, it's endless. The number of challenges. How do you see the music industry evolving, bearing all these challenges in mind, in the coming years? We're talking next 10, 15, 20 years. I'll start with you, Manusha.
Okay. Oh, you're asking me to crystal ball, and I'm going to give my age away, because I think Gillian and I were around Gillian. Cassettes, so I've lived through cassette, CDs, vinyl, come back, RBTs, DSPs, so and there's a couple of things I'd like to make a point about, is that our industry will continue to be disrupted. There'll always be disruptors that come from the outside that will bring a new model, a new way of thinking, a new way to use our music, which is a good thing. If we can find the disruptors that are going to work and going to increase our music consumption. So for us, obviously, as record companies, we try to either work with the disruptors, find them, work with them, find ways to license our content to them. So that's my one thing, disruption. Where is it going to come from next, and how are we going to work with that next disruption, and have a symbiotic relationship so that our artists can earn fairly. So that's one. The other one is that Africa is a long-term play. I think, we're just not going to overnight make huge amounts of money, but there are opportunities, and once we work with the telcos and we work to lower the barriers of entry, that's important. The other thing is working with government and getting government support. I think, because we're an IP industry, I think it's very important for us to ensure across the various countries that our artists' IP is protected, and that there are ways for us to protect it, and that our legislation is up to date to cater for these new ways of working, and to ensure that our IPs are protected. I think sort of localization. I think I can't repeat that more. Frank spoke about podcasts, which is great. And then sort of my last point, and it will come like it comes in other markets, but is voice activated services. I'm sure we'd all like to at some point shout at Alexa to play the nursery rhymes to our kids, read the bedtime story, or call up the song from our matric dance or youth, or whatever it is, or to be able to Shazam. So I think voice activated services will develop, but those are things still to come to our market and still to have a little bit, the huge impact that it has in other markets. So I think that's me in a nutshell. Thank you very much. And I'll leave it at this.
Thank you very much. Kabelo, jump on this with your final words.
Geez, yeah, I think Manusha stole all my points. So, I mean, look, I think, kind of the one thing that I feel like kind of as Africa separates us from everything else is the human element. So I don't really have like a forecast. I just hope that we never lose that human element, I think machine learning can only do but so much, because machine learning doesn't understand culture, doesn't understand artists, doesn't understand people. Yes, we can tick different things as you enter an app, but it will never replace a human on the ground. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of making sure that, there is at least people that are still in tune with that, because I think that's what kind of right now separates us from the Americas and all that stuff. It's just that human element that's still here, because like you said, it's like, there's still a big sense of community in Africa that I hope we never lose.
Okay. Adeyemi Adetunji.
Well, I believe that the future of the music industry in Africa is mainly just going to see more collaborations, not only locally, but internationally, so that artists and DSPs and radio kind of grow together as they see the data that can be exchanged from each other. I really do believe that the next generation of artists are going to be a lot of data-driven people that understand the power of analytics in order to grow their audiences and enhance their market share in not only their local market but internationally. So I really just believe that the future is in collaboration, because that's where growth really will lie. So that's what I believe is the future of the African music.
That's cool. I love collaborations. Okay, let's come to you, Frank Kaku.
Yes. Well, to my mind, Africa is actually going to be the extension for every other markets. Let's take an example. France has like 70 million people today, and the Francophone market, the French-speaking market, is, as we speak, a market of almost 500 million people. So imagine a huge French-speaking star on the continent doesn't have to think of should I get my music played in France, when he'll have all the structure locally. And I think that we'll get to more conscious artists about the environment and the opportunities they have. I also think that artists will get more and more involved in the communication towards their business environment in the industry. I think that some artists we'll get to talk about the number of streams. We'll get to talk about their local successes to educate their audience, but also educate the next generation. Of course, collaborations. Of course, bridges will be made between these huge major markets, but and our adapted platforms will be key in the next 5-10 years.
Great. Let's not take all the words away from Gillian Ezra. You have the final words, Gillian.
Thank you. I think all excellent points. What I'm looking forward to is the evolution backstage. We've all talked about front stage, but I'm looking forward to artists learning about their rights. I'm looking forward to more conversation about licensing. We have international streaming services stepping forward now to comment on, is the licensing model right? And I don't think anybody has the answers right now. We're a new industry streaming in terms of understanding. And I think that it's going to be amazing to see artists get more involved in these kinds of conversations, understanding these things. And it's the first time, I think, that as an industry, we've had a holistic conversation about this. There's been, a model that's been set somewhere in the industry and everyone else has followed along that model. And here we have an entire industry of people discussing, from DSPs to licensors to artists, who are of course licensors as well, all discussing what is the right way forward for this industry and how can you not win with a conversation like that. Look at the commitment in this panel.
Okay.
Getting this right for our artists. So the future is good.
The future is good. Couldn't have wrapped it better. And the passion is definitely there. We all want Africa's music streaming industry to even boom more. And that's definitely a great thing. Guys, I wish we had like 10 more hours because there's just so many things more to talk about. But time will not allow us. Nusha Sarawan, Commercial and Business Affairs Director with Sony Music. Thanks for your time. Gillian Ezra, Group Head Legal and Commercial, Simfai. Ade Adetunji, Head of Operations and Commercial Partnerships with AudioMac. Then there's Kabelu Makudu, Music Curator, Label Relations and Content Marketing Lead with Jukes. Yep. And there's Frank Kabu, Director General, Universal Music Africa. Thanks a lot, guys, for your time. Hopefully we can keep the conversation going offline and, all contribute our quota, all hands on deck, right? Guys, thanks a lot for joining us. I am Eddie Micah Jr., broadcast journalist with Deutsche Welle here in Bonn, Germany. And it's been a pleasure. Back to you, Shana Rafter.
Thank you.